Hello everybody and welcome to a brand new Elder Scrolls Online character build video. Excuse me, had a little air bubble. But today guys, I bring you the Divine Monk redone for Scalebreaker. And it's not really redone, it's just updated for Scalebreaker and nothing really changed with it. It still pretty much plays the same. I just wanted to make sure that people that are playing it have a new idea or a new way that you could play it. This one's a little bit easier to set up than the other one, so we're going to get into that. But the background to the Divine Monks is they are, they can be from any culture, society. They're more or less martial healers and group support. So that's kind of the idea behind it. Alright. And with all my videos, of course, disclaimer, this is a role-play, casual playtime build. It is not meant for meta play or to be treated like meta. It is just meant to be something that you can play, enjoy the game with, play more than just Overland. This build will get you into veteran dungeons. It'll get you into, play through veteran dungeons. It will play through normal trials. And while you're doing those normal trials, you can start collecting the stuff necessary to start playing a more advanced version of this in a trial setting. And there is a few sets that I would suggest, but for now we're just going to leave it as is. So let's go ahead and get into the build. Taking a look at this, we are the Divine Monk. We are a Khajiit Templar. Now, Khajiits play this build very well, and that's because of their natural benefits they get in their racial passives, but also the fact that they're very versatile in what they can do with their racial benefits. So that's kind of why I chose the Khajiit for this, and the fact that in the New Elsewhere chapter they actually have these monk characters that you get introduced to, these Khajiit monks that look very similar to this, and they almost work in a very similar fashion. So, Khajiit Templar is the class, or we're Khajiit and we're the Templar class. As you can see, we have 64 points in the stamina. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you could go with the attributes here. You could go half and half if you wanted, and so you have a little bit more magicka, but you really don't need more magicka than what's already there, because you're going to be your resource management is going to play more into the stamina side than the magicka side. The magicka side is more or less there to offer some group support and heals, some damage capabilities, and it really depends on how you play the build. So as you can see, we have 21k magicka, 21k health, 31k max stamina. We do have 1005 mag recovery and 1015 stamina recovery. Our spell damage is 1736. Weapon damage is 2486. We have a 38% spell crit, 42% weapon crit. We do have a 14k spell resist with a 13k physical resist. And you can actually adjust this a little bit more, I think. Because I think I did something with the champion points. If I don't remember. Nope, never mind. You can't do anything more with the with those resistances. We are running the Thief Mundus Stone. That is the best thing you could run with this, and we are using Tri-Stat Food. Now, depending on the race, depending on the setup, sometimes you might have to make some adjustments due to racial differences, but most of the time, like even an Argonian could play this build. So, alright. Now, moving on to our inventory and equipment. We do use tripods primarily because we use both resources. You can use weapon power pots if you want, and the spell power pots depending on the type of, more towards the direction of role you're playing. So if you're playing more magicka based with a lot of heals and stuff, it'd be better to use spell power pots. If you're playing more stamina based, more physical based, it's better to go with the warrior power pots. But if you are playing this build as is, it's better to go with tripods. Again, we do use Tri-Stat Food for the enhanced magicka stamina, and health. And then the sets we run, starting with the monster set. Now, the monster sets are optional, guys. There's so many different monster sets that can play well with this build. The ones I tend to use, though, is Silitrix. The reason I use Silitrix with this is because, one, it gives you max stamina. This helps in just giving your character a little bit more stamina pool. Number two, the 2-piece is when you deal damage, you have a 10% chance to create an earthquake at the enemy. After 1.5 seconds, it erupts and then knocks them down, dealing X amount of physical damage to all enemies within 4 meters and stunning them for 3 seconds. And that stun actually knocks them to the ground, which is really nice. And the nice thing about this setup is it's a CC set with the ability for damage. So it's a nice crowd control with a little bit of damage, and it works out really well, especially in some of those more tighter, like, fighting areas and dungeons. Some of those places where you can like control the movement of enemies, and you bring them to certain locations to bring them down faster. This is a really great set for that, because you can CC stun or CC lock a bunch of them in place. So it's a nice set for that. Moving on to our body piece, our 5-piece body, we are using Hunting's Rage. Now, depending on the build, depending on the character, depending on the player, you can also use other sets here. Some of the other sets you could use is Night Mother's Gaze. You can use Kvetch's Gladiator in place of Hunting's Rage if you want. Those are 2 good options, and they work out really well. Or you can even run Twiceborn Star. So you really have a kind of a good mix here. Now, this is a light armor build. This is not a medium armor build. This is not a heavy armor build. This is a light armor melee magic build. Alright, so the nice thing about Hunting's Rage is it goes 2-piece critical, 3-piece stamina, 4-piece critical, 5-piece weapon damage. The weapon damage really adds to your ability to be more supportive to your group with certain abilities and such, along with also playing into the idea of being a melee type magic person. Alright, moving on to the next set, and this is where I changed things up from the last time. The last time I was using Pelinals with this, and Pelinals is going to be a really good option for this setup because it's going to equalize your weapon and spell damage, which makes it work really good with this setup, and you get more mag recovery and more stam recovery. So, alright, but with this, we are using Bloodthorns. Now, Bloodthorns might seem like a cheesy set. This is an overland set. It's really easy to get, but the 2-piece adds spell damage, the 3-piece max magicka, the 4-piece mag recovery, and then the 5-piece. When you deal direct damage, you restore 660 magicka and stamina. This effect can occur once every 5 seconds. Every 5 seconds, you're basically going to be getting resources back because you will be throwing light attacks. Alright, going over the traits and enchants on the gear, starting with the monster set, we are using an invigorating light helm with a tri-stat. The reason for the invigorating, resource management. You want to be able to have good resource management. So we use a invigorating helm for that, and that gives us 11 points more to our health, stamina, and mag recovery. And being a Khajiit, we also get health, we get stamina, health, and mag recovery. So this plays really well into the race, but it also plays really well into the build with the fact that you are playing off both resources. Alright, tri-stat, again, we are a hybrid type character, and being able to take advantage of all 3 stats is really important, especially our magic and stamina pools. The higher health just gives us greater survivability. Moving on to the shoulders now, we are using Divine's max stamina on the, or max magicka, sorry. I keep forgetting this one. Divine's max magicka on the shoulders, and the reason for that, the magicka, is to increase your magicka pool. It's a small amount, but when you get all the racial benefits and you get all the passive benefits that increase and enhance how much you get in magicka and stamina from things, this really plays well into, again, the build type. So that's why we use Magicka here. We also have a Magicka Divines on the belt. And this is, again, to give us a little bit more Magicka. And then on the boots and gloves, we have Divines Stamina. And this is going to give us more stamina towards our character, along with the stamina from Hunting's Rage, Silistrix. That's how we can get that 31k max stamina, 21k max Magicka. We want those good high resource pools. Alright, moving on to the leggings now. We are using Invigorating, Tri-Stat. The Invigorating, again, is to maximize our resource recovery and everything. And the Tri-Stat is just to play into the character itself and giving you the 3 resources. And on the chest, we are using Reinforced Heavy Armor. The Reinforced is going to actually give you the higher amount of resistances here. One of the things the devs said that they wanted the player community to do was play more into survivability. So I was already doing this and it works out, so hey. Moving on to the jewelry. Now this is completely optional here, guys. If you can transmute your jewelry, I would suggest doing it to these setups. Tri-rune rings themselves and 2 weapon damage on the enchants. The reason for the 2 tri-rune rings, this is going to allow you to hybridize better. It's going to give you more health, magic, and stamina across the board, and it really plays out well with the tri-stats we have on our gear. So just a nice benefit. The weapon damage, of course, is to improve our weapon damage, since we do physical damage primarily with Magicka healing and Magicka support. On the necklace, we are using a infused necklace stamina recovery, and this is to enhance or to increase our stamina recovery, so we have a more effective way of managing our stamina and our Magicka. So, moving on to the weapons now, starting with the main weapon, we have a Sharpened Absorb Stamina enchant on this weapon, and this is a sword. Now, you can use daggers if you want. I prefer using swords. Daggers do increase your crit capability, but honestly, I like the swords because it increases all damage you do with any damage type ability by 5%, or 6% now. So I use dual swords. Alright. The other one is going to be Nirnhoned with an Absorb Magicka enchant. If you cannot get Nirnhoned, go Precise for now, or go with an Infused. Either one will work out really well. The reason for the Absorb Magicka is to help you sustain Magicka. Remember, this build uses a lot of Magicka and stamina. That's one of the reasons why I chose Bloodthorn for it. And sustaining can be a pain for some people, so having that Absorb Stamina, Absorb Magic on the front bar really plays well into the build. Now moving on to the back bar, we do have a Infused Weapon Damage enchant here. Now this is to enhance our ability at not only casting spell damage wise, but also our physical damage aspects. When fully buffed, we have about a almost 4k weapon damage, and that is if we have all the buffs from like a group, and then our spell damage goes to about 3k. So we have really good spell damage, we have really good weapon damage no matter what bar we're on because of this and with the different enchants. Alright, offhand here is going to be a dagger again. Oh, sorry, 2 daggers is what I'm using. A dagger on the one side, sword on the other. And the dagger is because of the crit. This is to increase your weapon or your overall damage by 3%. Swords, dual swords is better. I'm not going to lie, because of that increase to your damage or the overall damage that you can deal. But Absorb Magicka here as well on a Nirnhoned dagger. And the reason for the Nirnhoned is so you always have enhanced damage on both offhand weapons, which keeps your weapon damage more of an equalized setup when you swap bars too. So alright, now that we've done that, we're going to go ahead and talk about skills. Now, I mentioned, I was going to mention this in one of my videos over the weekend that I was going to do, but I never got around to it, sorry, real life. things do get me caught up at times, and this weekend didn't help. So one of the things I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the skills I have in my bars, and then I'm going to go through all the skills I have unlocked. So, starting with the first bar, the first ability that we're primarily, and this is, remember, all these abilities I have in my bar are optional. This is just the setup that I chose to run with this build because it works out really well for overland solo, public dungeon solo, even playing in groups in dungeons as a damage dealer with some support. And it really comes down to how you choose to play the build. So starting with the first ability, we do have Blood Craze. Now this deals damage up front, it deals damage over 10 seconds, and every 2 seconds it's going to heal you. So that's really nice. The next one we have is called Biting Jabs, and this is a stamina based ability. And I know people are going to question why Biting Jabs and not the Magicka one. The Magicka one, you'll burn through your Magicka too fast. So we go for the stamina one. So this way we have a spammable that we can use really well. So this does physical damage up front on the main target, and it does physical damage on the closest enemies. It does a conal attack in front of you, so it hits multiple targets. It reduces their movement speed by 70% for 2 seconds, and it also gives you major savagery, increasing your weapon critical by 2191. That's the other reason why we don't use potions that increase our weapon and spell damage, is because this doesn't really need it. The next one we have is Reflective Light. Now this does magic damage up front. It does flame damage up front, flame damage over 10 seconds. They can hit up to 3 enemies. It also reduces movement speed by 40% for 5 seconds, and it gives you Major Prophecy, increasing your spell critical. Next ability we have is Shrouded Daggers. This will hit a target and bounce 3 times, hitting the enemies. Each enemy it hits, it deals damage to. And if the enemy is hit, our casting are interrupted, set off balance, and stunned for 3 seconds. I love that they did this with this ability, because it kind of gives you this new reason to use this ability, which I think is nice. It also gives you Major Brutality, increasing your weapon damage. And anytime you cast this ability, you will also get 10% increase in magic damage through the Prism or the Illuminate. Sorry, you get Minor Sorcery when you cast the Reflective Light. Next ability we have, and this is not a floater ability. This is one I would suggest keeping here, and that is Echoing Vigor. The reason for Echoing Vigor is this will do an AoE 15-meter radius heal on you and your allies over time, and it heals for 11,784 health over 10 seconds. When fully buffed, this thing heals for 15k over 10 seconds. So, next ability we have, again, optional. There's a couple other abilities that you can use for this ultimate. You can use Empowering Sweeps. This is a super cheap ultimate. It does a lot of damage, which is really good. And then on top of that, we have the Dawnbreaker, which is another one you can use. So, but I like using Rend. This deals 40,000 damage over 16 seconds and heals you for 55% of the incoming damage, which is good. And it will hit multiple targets. It doesn't just hit one. So, alright, moving on to the back bar, starting with our first ability, we have Quick Cloak. Now, Quick Cloak is, again, you can use Deadly Cloak or Quick Cloak. The reason I chose Quick Cloak is because of its, one of its active things that allows you to move faster, but this deals damage every second for 12 seconds, or every 2 seconds for 12 seconds. It also gives you Major Evasion for that 12 seconds, reducing your damage taken from area attacks by 25%. And then every 2 seconds, of course, the Shrapnel Pulse is dealing X amount of damage to all enemies within 5 meters. Really good ability. And this also keeps your enchants procced on the back bar. Next ability we have is called Razor Caltrops. Now this is a interesting ability because a lot of people are going to wonder, why am I using Razor Caltrops? It's a horrible ability. This is one of those things I mentioned. This build is about group support and healing. So this ability brings group support by applying Major Fracture to multiple targets, not just one at a time like a tank does. It only applies for 4 seconds, which sucks. But at the same time, if you can apply it for 4 seconds, that's 4 seconds where you're getting that major fracture applied to multiple targets, which will make them die faster. Next ability we have is Purifying Light. You throw this out on an enemy, and basically what it does is it deals magic damage to them, and then it copies all the damage they take for 6 seconds, and releases 20% of that damage back as magic damage to them, which it says 12,744. In the end, it's like 15,000. It's really nice. And then when the effect ends, a pool of sunlight remains, attached to the enemy, healing you and nearby allies for X amount every 2 seconds for 6 seconds. Again, a nice supportive heal with damage. So next up, we have Ritual of Retribution. This is a great ability for you. This will remove 2 negative effects from you, and then on top of that, it deals damage and it heals people. So in a 12-meter radius. So this will drop an AOE that heals and deals damage. On top of that, it is also a great synergy for your group. So that's the other reason why we use it. And then we have our Restoring Focus. Now, we have Restoring Focus here because this boosts our physical and spell resistance, and it gives us stamina back every second. We have a little bit of a stamina sustain, or we need a little bit more better stamina sustain for this to work effectively. That's the reason why we use this. But also, Standing in the Ruin increases our physical and spell resistance by 50%. And I'm just going to show you guys what I mean by this. So when you pop this thing, you go to 22k spell, 22k or 21k physical, and that's what your resistances look like all the time if you stay within the circle that it's here. So, and it also gives you Minor Mending, which increases your healing done by 8% because of one of the passives. All right. Next ability, another optional one. You can put multiple different abilities here, but I do like using Reviving Barrier. Basically, you cast this ability and it puts a damage shield on you and all up to 11 members for 34,555 damage. It'll absorb for 30 seconds, and while it's active for 15 of those seconds, it heals allies for 15,212 over 15 seconds. So most of the time you can keep this going pretty well. It is an expensive ultimate, but it works out really well. I do tend to use this a little bit more. Alright, now that I've shown you what I have on the bars, now we're going to go over the skills I have unlocked. So first things first, make sure that no matter what, you always unlock all your class passives. This is going to allow you to use every ability you have in your arsenal, or at your fingertips, available to you to use, regardless. So let's go ahead and talk about what we have. We have first the ultimate ability, Empowering Sweeps. This does physical damage. We want to keep this around for the CC, or not the CC, the damage it does, and then the fact that it can empower you. Next, Biting Jabs. This is a stamina morph. Then we have Binding Javelins, also a stamina morph. This one will stun enemies, and it also is like a light spear that you throw at an enemy. It's a good ranged control ability. I like to use this in Battlegrounds and PvP, but I also use it in Overland too, if I'm questing and such, so really nice. Next one, Explosive Charge. This is a really good ability because it can interrupt enemy casters, set them off balance, and stun them for 3 seconds. I do use this. Not often, but I do use it. Another ability we have is Blazing Spear. We use this for, it does a decent amount of damage up front, decent amount of damage over 8 seconds, but it's also a really powerful synergy, and that's the other reason why we kind of keep it around, is so we can throw this out if we need more group support, if you will. Then we have Blazing Shield. I use this for when I'm solo playing. It basically allows me to absorb up to 7,312 physical damage, or any damage actually, for 6 seconds. And then on top of that, it scales with my max health, and the shield strength grows by 4% for each enemy nearby. And then when the shield expires, it explodes outward, dealing 38% of the damage it absorbed back to the enemies. Then we have Dawn's Wraith. I do use these abilities sometimes. Solar Disturbance is a great synergy, but it's also a great group support ability because you drop this down, and anyone standing within the range of this gets major any enemy, sorry, gets major maim applied to them for the duration, or for is it for the duration? Yeah, for the duration. And if they leave the circle, it's they still keep it for 6 seconds. So it's a really powerful debuff that you can put on enemies, and it's a really powerful synergy as well. Then we have Reflective Light, of course. We have Solar Barrage. We have Purifying Light, Unstable Core, Radiant Glory. Now, I'm not going to go through every ability and why I have it. I'm just going to go through it and just show you what I unlock. We have Remembrance. This is a great heal. It also applies major protection. Then you have Breath of Life. You have Ritual of Rebirth, Repentance, a Ritual of Retribution, Restoring Focus. And then on our weapons, when it comes to dual wield, I do unlock the ultimate active abilities and all passives. The active abilities I unlock are Rapid Strikes, Blood Craze, Steel Tornado, Quick Cloak, and Shrouded Daggers. Moving on to armor, we are a light armor build, so sometimes I like to use Harness Magicka sometimes for a damage shield. It does work better than Blazing Shield, and it also gives me some Magicka back when it absorbs stuff, so it's really kind of nice with that. I also take all the passives for the light armor. When it comes to medium armor, I just take the top 2 passives plus the bottom one. This adds into my ability to play not only stamina, but also a little better in my dodge rolling and such. And then with the heavy armor, I take the top 3. World skills, Soul Magic. I do take Shatter Soul. This is a really great damage over time, single target channel ability you can use. And it's really powerful. Then we have our Consuming Trap. Now, I use this when I'm in Overland. I don't use this very often in dungeons, even though it's a really good resource management skill. I like to use it in Overland, so I'm not burning through potions. Then the passives here. Moving on to Guild, Fighters Guild, I do take the ultimate Flawless Dawnbreaker. I do use it quite a bit. I do play this build on live, by the way, so just if you guys are wondering. But mine on live is a little different. I don't run Cellatrix. I actually run Sentinel of Rock, because I play it more of a healer type than I do as a mix. So, Flawless Dawnbreaker, great ability. Then we have Silver Leash for when we need to pull ads or trash in, and we don't want our tanks wasting resources, no offense. Let the support guy do it. We also have Ring of Preservation if we need to bring some more group healing and minor protection and minor endurance to the group. Then we have Evil Hunter. I don't really use this too often, but I will equip it if I don't want to use... like my bite, if I'm not using biting jabs, I'll equip this and then I'll put Rapid Strikes here, so that way I have a spammable, but I still have, you know, this effect here. And this is really nice because it reduces or it increases the damage of your stamina costing fighters guild abilities by 25%. I like that because I do use some abilities like Trap Beast or Barb Trap. So Barb Trap is another one that I use, and this is a really great damage up front and damage over time ability. And then I have the Fighters Guild passives. On the Mages Guild, I do unlock the passives, and the ultimate I unlock is Ice Comet. I like it because it's a really good CC skill, and it does really good damage over time. So then I have Inner Light. This is for the if I need to have more max magicka or something like that. If I'm doing more, if I have like Breath of Life on my bar or something where I'm expending a lot more magicka, I will use Inner Light. Also, it increases my spell critical, which increases my spell healing chance. So next up, we have Structured Entropy. This is a really good way to get minor or major sorcery and a nice heal. So I'll use this in conjunction with Inner Light just so I can get that major sorcery and minor sorcery to improve my healing capabilities. Then we have Scalding Ruin. I do use this as a really great ability. A lot of people don't use it too much, but it's a really good damage over time ability because it's kind of like... Rearming Trap or Barb Trap, but it's like a Magicka version. Now, it doesn't do as much damage in my hands as it would be for a Magicka person, but I still use it. Then I unlock Balance. I use this if I'm playing more like if I need resistances, but I don't want to use my own resistance buff. And I'm also doing wanting to exchange health for magicka, so I will use this. Sigil Order, Temporal Guard, Time Freeze, Crushing Weapon, great ability, especially if you want to get the passive benefits from the Sigil Order, like the shield and the stuff. I use Race Against Time sometimes just to get the major force, or the minor force. Min Spirit, I use this when I'm playing healing. And then Introspection, I will use sometimes if I'm playing more of a tank type setup. Yes, I do tank with this sometimes. Clairvoyance, Spell Orb, Concentrated Barrier, and Deliberation, all great passives when you're using the Undaunted skills. Sigil Order. Undaunted, Sanguine Altar, Tangled Webs, Inner Beast, Spike Bone Shield, and Energy Orb. Inner Beast I use for when I'm tanking to taunt enemies, usually in normal dungeons, or if I'm playing even in some veteran dungeons, like the base game dungeons, I will tank with this build sometimes. Energy Orb I use for resource management. It also has a nice heal over time, so and it can be activated multiple times. Always get the passives. And then moving on to Alliance War, I do take Aggressive Warhorn, Echoing Vigor, and Razor Caltrops. And then on the support side, Reviving Barrier, Efficient Purge, and Stalwart Guard, along with the Magicka Aid passive. The reason for the Efficient Purge is if I need a purge in a group, I can bring it and I can utilize it. So, Racials, Khajiit. So, Robustness, what it does, it gives you increased health recovery by 100 and stamina and magic recovery by 85. When you add the 22 points from your 2 pieces of the, oh my god, I'm losing my mind here, guys, but it puts you over 100 in stamina and mag recovery. The Invigorating pieces. Lunar Blessing increases your health, magic, and stamina by 825, and then Feline Ambush, this is really great for somebody like this. You get 10% increased critical damage and critical healing. So this really helps in that idea of like, hey, I'm a support character, I don't do just damage, I also do healing, so I bring a little bit of both, and that's where that really plays well into it. When it comes to crafting, Alchemy, medicinal use, great benefit, and adds 30% longer potion time. And then on provisioning, Gourmand and Connoisseur, both of these add 20 minutes to your food and drinks. So with us using Tri-Stat Food, this is going to increase that food's length by 2 hours, or from 2 hours to 2 hours and 20 minutes. And then with Connoisseur, we get 20 minutes added to our drinks. So again, really beneficial. And those are the skills and abilities and passives that I unlock on my characters. The reason for the unlocking of so many different skills and abilities is so this way I'm not restricted to just having the 6 skills that I use on my bar. I can actually incorporate other skills when I need them for different situations, whether I'm tanking, whether I'm playing healer, or whether I'm playing damage dealer. Right, now moving on to champion points. Starting with the red tree, we have 56 in Ironclad. This reduces damage taken from direct damage attacks by 20%. Moving on to the middle red tree here, we have 38 into light armor focus. This is going to increase your physical resistance by 3250, and this applies to your overall resistance value. So it's really nice to have that extra oomph there to give you that little bit of extra survivability. Then we have 31 into thick skin. This reduces your damage taken from damage over time effects by 13%. Sorry for the trimmer. 43 into hardy reduces your damage taken from physical poison disease damage by 10%, and 43 into elemental defender, reducing your damage taken from flame, frost, shock, and magic damage by 10%. Moving on over here, we have 40 into bastion. This increases the effectiveness of your damage shields by 16%. We do want this because of blazing shield and also the other shield, because of the way our character works. We do use those shields from time to time, but having to respec your CP when you need to use things can get costly. That's why I use kind of a universal CP setup. And then on top of that, we have 19 into quick recovery, increasing our healing received by 5%. Moving on to the green tree, we have 40 in the Warlord. This is going to reduce your cost of break free by 16%. We have 16 in the Sprinter, reducing your sprint cost by 10%. 16 in the Bashing Focus, reducing your bash cost by 10%. And then moving on into the middle tree here, we have 43 in the Mooncalf. This increases stam recovery by 10. And then we have 75 in Arcanus, increasing magic recovery by 14%. Remember, we are a light armor build, but we can kind of mix and match because of the racial benefits of having that mag recovery and stam recovery. Moving on over here, we have 40 in the Tumbling, reducing your dodge roll cost by 16%, and then we have 40 in the Shadow Ward, reducing your block cost by 16%. Moving on to the blue tree, and this is where you're going to see more hybridization. We have 43 in the Blessed. This increases your healing done by 10%. We have 43 into Elfborn, or 23 in Elfborn, increasing your critical damage and critical healing done by 10%. And this is with magic abilities, so this plays well with that 10% passive we get. So it does critical damage and healing either way. On top of that, we have 43 in the Elemental Expert. This increases Flame Frost, Shock, and magic damage by 10%. And then moving on to the middle tree, since we only use dual wield, we are going to put 35 in the Physical Weapon Expert. This is going to increase our light and heavy attack damage done with our dual wield by 20%. We also have 40 in the Mastered Arms, which this increases our direct damage done by 16%. And a lot of people don't take into retrospect all the different passives that you could unlock. So I'm going to point out these three. Retaliation is really great. If you block a heavy attack, your next light attack used within 7 seconds deals 30% more damage. And then if you do block an attack, you can use Reposit, or a lot of people call it Repost. It's actually Reposit. I know it's a weird saying, but that's the true pronunciation of it. But when you block a melee attack, you have a 15% chance to deal 5,446 physical damage back to the enemy, and this can happen every 5 seconds. And that's if you block an attack. It doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it's a nice chunk of damage. And then, of course, Butcher. This increases your light and heavy attack damage by 5% when enemies are below 25% health. Moving on over here, we have Mighty. This we have 43 points into it, increasing your physical poison and disease damage by 10%. 23 into Precise Strikes, increasing critical damage and critical healing with stamina abilities by 10%. And then we have 20 into Thaumaturge. This increases the damage done with damage over time effects by 9%. So now that you guys have seen that stuff, what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and eat some more food. And then what we're going to do is we're going to jump over to a dungeon so you guys can see what this is like. And we're going to actually go into the layer of Marsalek dungeon. I would usually pick one of the two dungeons, newer dungeons added to the game. Marsalek is just an easier one to get through. There's not a lot of stuff you have to deal with. But I'm just going to play through this content and just to show you how the build works, and you guys can see for yourself the way it can work. Now, how far I get, I do not know. And I see they still haven't fixed that one bug back there, where you go through the Way Shrine. Sorry for the sniffles today. My allergies are just going crazy. So in normal mode, the dungeons aren't too difficult. This character is definitely overpowered for him. But it's still something like you can two-man this with this build and something else, or you can, attempt to solo it if you want, or what have you. It really just is up to the player. And what I'll do is I'll just play up to the first boss encounter, and then that way you guys can see, like, oh, okay, this build works pretty well. It's a really fun build, though, and I have actually been enjoying it way more than I normally would with other builds on the live service. And that's primarily because on live, you know, I can actually play with a lot of other people. I'm not in here by myself like I am right now on the PTS alone. Sorry, that was a reference to somebody else. Actually, it was me picking on somebody else. Oh, and Caltrops only, it says it only lasts for 4 seconds. It actually stays reapplied every 4 seconds, so, for the duration. So you actually keep Major Fracture up for the whole duration of the ability. Oh my gosh, I thought I saw the bars, I didn't. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, you're not doing much damage and yada yada yada. I don't really care how much damage my characters do as long as I can complete the content, and while I'm doing it, I'm having a fun time. And I really do enjoy this build because it's really fun. Alright, up to the first boss encounter, which we gotta wait. But basically, you gotta fight Celine here, and I'm just gonna show you this build and its capabilities. I will die, most likely. This build just can't handle Celine by itself. Not with this setup. I'm sure I could probably find a setup that would work, utilizing my skills and abilities, so.
Now for payment in kind. It's my turn to study
Come on.
your insight.
Wow. Big Spider. Now this is what'll kill me. Whack, one shot. 26,000 points of venom damage. So, that is the Divine Monk, guys. Like I said, it's a fun build. I understand a lot of people probably won't care for it because it's not your atypical thing, but, you know, whatever people have fun playing, that's what matters. And I have a lot of fun playing this build. Maybe some of you might. That's why I share it with you. And that is it for this build video, though, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, you guys know what's coming next. Go ahead and hit that like button. If you guys want to see more videos by me, you can subscribe. Other than that, I want to thank you all for watching. Until next time, have a wonderful day. And this guy might see you in game. Bye.